A Russian oil tanker has arrived in Cuba, bringing in much-needed crude. Millions of Cubans have been struggling with blackouts after the United States cut off oil exports to Cuba when they ousted Nicolas Maduro. Health officials in Havana say hospitals are particularly affected by the power cuts there. But over the weekend, Donald Trump indicated he had no problem with the country receiving supplies, including from Russia. Well, with me is Philip Turle to talk a bit about all of this from our Foreign Affairs desk. Philip, what can you tell us then about this apparent backpedaling by Donald Trump and the arrival now of this oil?
Well, this is called the Anatoly Kolokin. It's a ship that belongs to the Russian government. It's carrying 100,000 tons worth of fuel, which is going to come as a welcome break for the people of Cuba. As you mentioned, there's been a blockade on oil coming into the country since the capture of Nicolas Maduro, the Venezuelan president, back in January. And that's because Venezuela was one of the main suppliers of oil to the Cubans, and that has been cut off since Nicolas Maduro was captured. That oil was sent to the country for very advantageous tariffs. So since then, Cuba's been struggling to make ends meet with a massive oil shortage, which has led to power cuts and to drastic reductions in the amount of oil available for people to use in their everyday lives. So the arrival of this tanker with this 100,000 tons of oil on board will be used for diesel, gasoline, jet fuel, fuel oil, which is used to power many Cuban power plants. It's going to take time to refine much of it, but it's going to be used, I think, pretty quickly and will be a welcome break for all the Cubans. Now, this is quite a reversal for Donald Trump. We were just in the last few weeks hearing that the US is putting an embargo on any oil being allowed into Cuba at all, because what the US is trying to do is to asphyxiate the Cuban government. They've made no bones about the fact that they want the Cuban government to be overthrown by the people of Cuba and to get rid of Miguel Diaz-Canel, the president of Cuba, by any means. I think basically because Marco Rubio, who is of Cuban origin, the U.S. Secretary of State, would like to see a change of government while he is still Secretary of State under Donald Trump, with a view to himself running for president of the United States next time round. This would be a huge bonus for him to get rid of the communist regime, which has been in power since 1959. So that was why there was this big oil embargo, to weaken the regime, to make people rise up. Sounds exactly what Donald Trump was saying about the situation in Iran. So we've seen this U-turn where he's now allowing in this Russian ship of oil to alleviate the suffering, as Donald Trump says, to many of the people in Cuba.
And help us understand, Philip, why this decision has been taken now.
Well, that's the interesting thing, Nadia. To be honest with you, nobody really knows. But if you scratch the surface, you can understand, I think, where this is coming from. Donald Trump has been saying, well, I don't have a problem with a ship going in there. The situation is so difficult for the Cubans. Just one shipload of oil is not going to change anything. And for the Russians, it's not going to change anything either, for Vladimir Putin sending in one ship of oil. I think there are a couple of reasons. First of all, it's no secret that Donald Trump admires Vladimir Putin. Even the name of the operation that he's undertaking in Iran right now, called the military operation, reminds one of the special military operation that Vladimir Putin is calling the so-called war in Ukraine. And also the fact that Donald Trump is threatening to launch bombing raids on power installations in Iran is a bit like the threat and the carrying out of installation bombing in Ukraine by the Russians. So what we're seeing here is him allowing Russian oil into Cuba. And I think one of the reasons for that is because it would be very difficult for the US to stop that ship from getting there, because there would be, or there could riskily be, a confrontation just off the coast of Florida between the Russians and the Americans. And Donald Trump doesn't really want that to happen, especially as he has still got his eyes on trying to get out of the war in the Middle East, and doesn't want to have a conflict taking place just on out in the sea off the coast of Florida. And the second point is, of course, of the oil prices being very high right now. This might alleviate a little bit the world situation by allowing this ship into Cuba to help the people there and bring down oil prices. That would look good on Donald Trump also in the opinion polls. So I think those may be some of the reasons why this is taking place. But the bottom line is there's a big contradiction going on all the time about what Donald Trump is doing, where he's going, what he's saying, what he's going to do. And this is just another example with Donald Trump saying, well, Cuba is next, by the way, meaning that once he's finished with the war in Iran, he intends to get rid of the regime in Cuba. But at the same time, he's adding oil in there to alleviate the situation for the regime in Cuba.